What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to ICNVDriversedition, and today we are back at it again. We are revisiting that time old classic conversation about the Corvette C8 transmission. And the reason why we're dropping back into it today is because there have been some changes by GM, and let's just set the record straight. I mean, let's be honest, this topic is one of the most highly controversial topics out there in the Corvette community. And even today, since my last video, I constantly get asked questions about this topic every time I'm out in public and in all my messages and DMs that come across Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So today, let's talk about the Corvette C8 and that dual clutch transmission. Let's go. So let's jump right into this topic. First of all, let's just start off by sitting there saying the dual clutch transmission that's offered in the Corvette C8 is made by, and what we come to realize about this company is they are actually the leading dual clutch transmission company for Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens, and so forth. So with this type of background, why is it that we feel like the Corvette C8 transmission has so many issues? And honestly, I think it comes back to the fact that it's mass produced. So to meet that demand of such a mass produced transmission and keep it, I would say, halfway obtainable for the Corvette, they may use a couple different suppliers to get their parts from for the Corvette. So when people say the transmission isn't well built, just know that's not actually a true statement, and it's actually made by one of the leading, or should I say the top, dual clutch transmission company out there. Now, let's focus on what we came to talk about. So why am I shooting this video again? Well, when we dive into the dual clutch transmission, GM has done its part by issuing out so many different informative things for us to dive into with the dual clutch transmission. So first off, if you don't know, inside your owner's manual, there is actually a service and maintenance guide that can help you follow along the maintenance for your dual clutch transmission. But many people actually haven't cracked that book open or looked into it to actually understand, or should I say discover, this information is there. Since a lot of people haven't taken the time to look for this chart that outlines the maintenance plan for their vehicle, a lot of misinformation has been spread out throughout the Corvette community through several YouTube channels and forums, groups on Facebook, and so forth. So I'm trying to help set the record straight, or at least give you guys a peace of mind when I sit there and say the dual clutch transmission has had its issues with the Corvette, but it's not a bad transmission. And if you do the maintenance that you're supposed to do, you don't have to worry about your warranty getting voided, which is the main reason I get into a lot of conversations about this dual clutch transmission for the Corvette. Let's go over precisely what GM says about the dual clutch transmission and the servicing. That way, if you follow the information that is provided, you shouldn't have to worry about your warranty getting voided. But I do know there is some gray areas which causes concern and some wiggle room for us to make our own determination. But let's see what GM says. So once you look at this chart right here, what you notice is the dual clutch transmission is scheduled to be serviced at 7,500 miles, around the same point in time that it says your 7,500 mile engine oil change should be performed as well. When they first came out, they assumed that people would drive within a year 7,500 miles on their car. But I guess GM did not take into consideration that many people would not put this type of miles on their car within the first year. So to help with that, GM actually went out and extended that free service from 1 year to 2 years. That way, now you can put 7,500 miles on your car within 2 years and still get that free oil change and that free dual clutch transmission replacement for the filter. But what we're starting to realize is some people aren't even getting close to that type of mileage in the 2 year time frame. So from my understanding, GM has now extended that free service to the 3 year mark. But What they have also done is they have now separated for the 2024 model year the free dual clutch transmission filter replacement from the actual oil change. So you can now use the oil change, the free oil change, and not have to lose the free dual clutch transmission filter replacement if you aren't near 7,500 miles. So since we now have this information out, what does that mean? In layman's terms, that you have 3 years to put 7,500 miles on your transmission to change that filter. Now, this follows the basic maintenance structure they already had out before, except it allows you to get your trans filter replaced up to 3 years on GM. And that is significant because at the 3-year mark, GM has already in place the requirement for a trans filter flush of your fluid. So let's look at the letter GM sent out to remind people of the required servicing of their transmission so they wouldn't void their warranties. GM sent the letter out that said, this is a reminder that the transmission oil filter in your vehicle must be replaced between 7,000 and 8,000 miles. Again, at 22,500 miles and every additional 22,500 miles accumulated. Please refer to the attached insert for information regarding the maintenance schedule for your vehicle. If the transmission oil filter was replaced prior to 7,000 miles, it must still be replaced by 8,000 miles. Now, I think that kind of clearly puts the information out there like we need to hear it. But I'm going to go into it a little bit more and then go into more depth with the actual information they provided. It said if you already replaced the trans filter before 7,000 miles, replace the filter again by 8,000 miles. If you have not replaced the filter and the mileage is under 7,000 miles, replace the filter between 7,000 and 8,000 miles. If you have not replaced the filter and your mileage is over 8,000 miles, make an appointment with your dealer. If the mileage is under 8,000 miles and your vehicle is 3 or more years old, make an appointment with your dealer. Transmission oil needs to be changed every 3 years at a minimum. The oil can be changed independently from the external canister filter. The transmission oil life monitor on board the vehicle may not reach 0 at the end of each 3-year period. If you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, join the ICNV Driver Edition community. If you hit me up in the comments below or on any one of my social media platforms, I will do my best to respond back. And if the topic is interesting enough, I will make a video on it. So reach out, let's chat. But let's get back to this video. Did you get it? Did you understand? Okay. Basically, they're saying change the trans filter between 7,000 and 8,000 miles within the first 3 years of ownership of your car. It's that simple. But if you've already went over the mileage of the car or 8,000 miles, you need to contact your dealer immediately to get that service performed. If you haven't reached 7,000 or 8,000 miles within the first 3 years, you still need to reach out to your dealer to get that service performed. Because ultimately, at the 3-year mark, GM wants the trans filter fluid flushed, serviced, and replaced, which also includes your trans filter. Now, here's the question that I know is going to come up, and I'm almost 100% certain it's going to be an interesting price for many of you out there. At the 3-year mark, the trans fluid requires a flush, slash, or drain of the fluid to have it replaced. That is not covered by GM. So, the free servicing that has been extended up to 3 years may give you some form of discount towards that service. But the problem is, if you go to a dealer independently, that service is typically somewhere between $750 and $1,000. The trans filter replacement is somewhere between $500 and $750. So your natural thought will be it's going to cost you $250 with the add-on of the free filter replacement, but I'm sure we're going to see some other outrageous costs come up from dealers about this, and that's going to trigger a lot of questions and concerns. But at the end of the day, to keep your warranty in effect, they want the filter replaced in a timely manner around the 3-year mark. And if you've already exceeded that, they want you to get it done immediately. And by them saying getting it done immediately, that is supposed to help maintain your warranty. As long as it's done immediately and there's no issues indicated with your transmission already for the failure of not having it done when it was supposed to be. So if you ask me, there's something that's taking place, I would say somewhere between the 5,000 and the 7,000 mile wearing timeline of your vehicle, that they want to inspect the oil filter to see if there's any signs of something malfunctioning inside your transmission or it's not wearing correctly. That's the assumption I would make. Now, I got my trans filter replaced back in 2021, right around the 1-year mark, at about 6,400 miles. I can't remember precisely, but it was close to that range. I didn't do it again between 7,000 and 8,000 because back then there was no, I would say, implications or signs that it had to be done then, but I did replace it again on my own around the 22,000 mile mark. Now, I didn't take it back to GM for that, and I know a lot of people are concerned about, will it actually void your warranty? The question's going to come up, what does GM say about replacing your own trans filter? And here's what the engineer had to say.
Our next question is from Andy Bump from Corvette Forum. He says, what does the hydraulic system flush do, and should it be done every time the DCT external canister is replaced? That's a good technical question.
It is, so I'll take a start at it. The hydraulic system flush does kind of the way it's described. It forces transmission fluid through the fine filter, the filter that you replace. So at a dealership, they can hook up the dealer service tool to the car and run a routine that will tell the trans control module to do this fluid filter flush.
Okay.
And because the car is already hoisted on a rack, the technician's already got the panels off, there's some other work he's doing. This kind of happens in parallel in the background.
Okay.
So we're doing it at a dealer visit because we can, and we can take the last bit of whatever contamination might be in that oil and get it into the filter before the technician replaces it. Do-it-yourselfers have become nervous that, hey, now I can't do it myself. I don't have a service tool. I can't force this routine. You don't have to do the routine. Like I said, we do it because we can, but the fine filtering routine happens through normal driving anyway. In fact, when you're driving steady state, like say down the highway,
right,
we run a routine in the transmission that will force more of that fluid through the fine filter. So normal driving is doing this. If you are a do-it-yourselfer, you don't want anyone else touching your car, you can change the trans filter without running this routine.
Okay, that sounds good.
So you just heard from the GM engineer's own mouth that you do not have to take your vehicle to the dealership to have the trans filter replaced or do the servicing of the trans filter flush or / drain of the trans fluid. And I say this to you because I know in the past, many of you have reached out and said it's not a trans filter flush. Well, you just heard the General Motors engineer say it is pretty much a trans filter flush based on how they recommend it or they do it. Now, I will give you some little more information from my own personal point of view about this a little later, about this part of the conversation, but let's keep moving forward. The question is, how do you know or prevent your warranty from being voided? And my answer would be you have to keep some form of records of the date it was done, maybe even a picture or something showing that you were actually doing the servicing, not to mention the correct DCT fluid put back into the transmission to have receipts for that. I know this can seem overwhelming and really like a lot to do, but honestly, the car comes with a 5-year, 60,000 mile powertrain warranty. And I know a lot of people have signed up for a GMPP, or as they say, extended GM warranty. You may still need to keep that documentation. But honestly, the real reason I get a lot of messages and so forth, because I think a lot of questions that come up and trigger this conversation is because people are buying used Corvette C8s and they're not sure when their maintenance was done, if the trans filter replacement has taken place. And pretty much based off this information GM has put out, like I've said in the past, if you buy a used C8 and your car is over 3 years old, go ahead and get that trans filter flush or drain performed, and that should get you up to date with the requirements that GM is requesting to not void your warranty. If you haven't hit that 3-year mark and you're over 8,000 miles and can't confirm when the DCT filter was done, go ahead and schedule your car for a DC filter replacement at a dealership. I recommend the dealership because you want the canister inspected by someone that is a professional, especially since it was overdue. That's just my suggestion. It doesn't have to be done, but you need to take care of that filter replacement as soon as possible and document it and have proof that you did it. That way, if something comes up, they should not void your warranty because the DCT filter was serviced and replaced and they were given an opportunity to look at the history of your transmission. That's why I say take it to the dealer. And going forward, your warranty should be good, and go ahead and continue to service it as planned by the guide, outline, and this letter they sent out. And ultimately, once you flush the fluid and so forth, I think you're in a good stance. And that's really what this has always been about. A lot of people are out here talking about, hey, what the requirements are, and I appreciate the information they put out because it's very helpful, but they always steer away from the conversation of what happens if you buy a car used. And realistically, a lot of these CA owners aren't buying new cars. They are getting their cars off the used market, which means some of them are going into these ownership purchases extremely blind. And these are the people that are asking for help. And like I said, when I run across people out in the community or I get these messages and comments in the chat, I do my best to respond. But again, I'm just sharing with you information from the letter that GM sent out to all CA owners to help clarify or explain or reinforce the servicing that needs to be done to the vehicle, and from the information that is inside your owner's manual. Now, like I stated before, the one thing I will sit there and say to you, because this was covered in another video, and I've said the DCT transmission flush so many times, and a lot of people said it's not a flush. Well, as you heard earlier, the engineer explained what has to be done and how the fluid is flushed through the system before they remove the filter and drain the fluid. And in essence, they call it a flush as well. Like I stated before, the engineers call it a DCT filter flush. If you are about to change the DCT trans filter and drain the fluid in your car, I would recommend, just like explained in that short video, that you can get on the highway and drive your car at a certain RPM and it flushes the fluid through the filter just as if you had the tool that the engineers would use or your maintenance mechanic would use at the GM service facility to flush the fluid. So before you drain the fluid, I would recommend taking your car out for a quick ride, maybe 4 to 5 miles on the highway, at least 10 minutes, open it up and let that fluid flush. Bring it back in. Don't go right to it. Let it sit, but at least let it warm, or so I say cool off some before you start messing with it. But you at least want to get that fluid flushing through the system. Now, I wouldn't recommend just replacing the filter and draining the fluid. You can do that and your warranty won't get voided. But to get that flush effect, I would just say take it out for a quick drive, open it up, and let that fluid circulate, and let the car do what it do. Enjoy the drive, and then come home, drain that fluid, and replenish it. That's my suggestion. But if there's any other questions you guys have, or you feel like I did not cover in this video, let me know. Like I said before at the beginning, we're just trying to get all the myths off the table. And if there's anything I missed, reach out to me. I will address it. As always, ICNV Driver's Edition. Go ahead, hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Join the ICNV Driver's Edition community. We are an interactive community, which means if you hit me up on any one of my social media platforms or in the comments below, I will do my best to respond. And if the topic you bring up is interesting enough, I may even shoot a video on it. But don't forget, this community is also made up of car enthusiasts that love to drive cars to make you turn your head, that aren't your everyday people movers. So if you feel like you are one of those people, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, lock in with your boy, and don't miss out on any of these videos and the content that's coming your way. Remember, we were all made in his image and given dominion over the world, which means we weren't just meant to be. So chase your dreams, build your visions, never ever give up, and embrace your own identity. It is okay to be unique. He's not done with you, and he's definitely not done with me. So remember to stay humble, stay focused, and stay blessed. And I'll see you in these streets. Peace.